In today's video, we're continuing on with our NHL season preview series. We're now jumping over to the Metropolitan Division, and we're going to start with the New York Islanders. We'll discuss their upcoming year, and can they bounce back from last year's disappointment, coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, today we're continuing on with our NHL season preview series for the upcoming 22-23 season. We're going to start with the Metro Division with the New York Islanders. Of course, first we're going to recap the 21-22 season, take a look at some key numbers. Then we're going to take a look at how this team has changed, any prospects that might be able to have an impact on the upcoming roster in the season, and take a look at their projected lineup heading into the year and any big questions we feel they need to look at and answer going into the season. So first, let's recap the 21-22 season. They finished with a record of 37, 35, and 10 for 84 points. Of course, missed out on the playoffs. The Islanders had a miserable start to the year, a long road trip waiting for their new building to open. The team got hit by COVID. Between those two things, they were really battered and really had a terrible start to the year, and the season kind of got off the rails early. They did find ways to make it a more respectable result, and kind of win more games down the stretch, but unfortunately, it was too little too late. Goals were definitely down last year. They scored 231 for 24th best. Goals against was pretty solid as usual, 237 for 10th overall. The power play was okay, 22.1%. That's actually pretty good. 12th best in the NHL. And the PK was exceptional as usual, 84.2% for 4th best. So really overall, lots to like there. Goal scoring was definitely down and definitely caused some issues. Of course, we saw Barry Trotz be let go earlier this offseason. Lane Lambert will be in his first season as the new head coach of the Islanders. Of course, Lambert worked with Trotz for quite some time as an assistant, so we certainly will be very interesting to see just how different of an approach or different style or what we're going to see differently from a guy who's, like I said, worked under Trotz for so long. And this team has been so well known for its strong defensive structure, strong defensive play, good goaltending. How is that any of that going to change? I mean, they need to find a way to kind of maintain their defensive metrics as they can while adding more offense, and that's going to be the tricky part here. Of course, they missed the playoffs last year after, like I said, a real tough start to the year and some circumstances that were well beyond some of their control. But before that, they had made the playoffs for 3 consecutive years, losing in the conference finals twice. So, before last year, they were looked upon as a team that was kind of close to being cup contenders, and then they went from that to missing. So we'll see if they can bounce back. Of course, GM Lou Lamoriello still, running the show there. 2-time GM of the year. I know a lot of fans and a lot of people were kind of upset that he didn't make more moves and really do more things to change this team going into this coming year after last year's disappointing season. He's certainly doubling down on believing in this group, which is good that he believes in his team. But I think it's fair to say that even though there were some circumstances that were, like I said, out of their control between the rough schedule to start the year and a long road trip, and then COVID, like they're between Ottawa and the Islanders and a few teams, they really got hit hard early on. There was times when there was 8 to 10 regulars out of the lineup sometimes, and that's impossible to win games. They had a lot of things that they couldn't control, and it got away from them early. There's no doubt, and I know they're a better team than that, but you still have to think that at the end of the day, they were still missing a piece or two from getting over the top, and it would have been nice to see Lou do a little bit more to help this team. Obviously, getting some more offense and another play-driving winger, for example, would have been a real good thing to add. Now, let's take a look at what changes were made. Looking at the additions to this team, there's not much. There's only 2 names there. You get Alexander Romanov, who was acquired in a fairly substantial trade at the NHL Draft, comes over from Montreal. Of course, they gave up their first-round pick to do that. And, of course, Lou also signed Nikita Soshnikov, who comes back to the NHL from Russia after being away for 3 or 4 years. Of course, Lou knows Soshnikov from both of their time in the Maple Leaf organization. That's where he got started. Was a pretty interesting, solid prospect there for a while. Kind of got boxed out of a top 6 spot early on, though, with a lot of that top young talent that's in Toronto, most of which is still still there now. And of course, he's been, then he went to St. Louis for a little bit and been in Russia for like 3 or 4 years. Now he comes back. So can he be a scoring winger that maybe grab a top 6 or top 9 role? That is going to be very interesting to see here. He only got signed to a 1-year deal at league minimum, so it's really a no risk, potentially high reward if things work out. As far as the subtractions go from this roster, mostly just some older veterans that are not being re-signed and brought back, like Zdeno Chara, who just announced his retirement. Andy Green, who's, I believe, expected to retire as well. Thomas Hickey, he's still playing. I believe he's in training camp with another franchise. And Michael Del Cole is in a PTO with the Senators. So we'll see if either of them can continue things on. But really nothing overly substantial coming or going, with some minor tweaking. Romanov is a real good defenseman. I do like him. I think he'll be a good fit. It'd be interesting to see how he works with a guy like Noah Dobson, for example. But other than that, not a whole lot happening for the Islanders. But it will be good to see that they're going to have a little bit more youth back there, because obviously Chara and Green, I know they tried their hardest, did their best for this team last year, but they were just not have enough there to really get the job done. Like, you could tell their careers basically, in my opinion, were over, and they were just deployed way too much and way too much expected from them. So to me, getting some more younger guys in there who are better, quicker, more durable, younger, more speed, it's going to be better for sure. And Romanov will be a good, real solid part of that. Of course, as far as prospects go, do they have any prospects that can see NHL time to have an impact this year? And I do think the answer to that question is definitely yes. How much will remain to be seen, but it would be really nice to see Robin Salo really grab a spot here. He's got an opportunity to jump up and grab the final spot in the top 6 D-Corps. They certainly need somebody to be on the left side. And to me, Salo very much could be that player. So we'll see. I mean, Simon Holmstrom to me is probably the main forward that I would expect to get some NHL action. I don't know if it's going to be with any kind of regularity, but he'll probably be one of the primary call-ups. He had a real good year in Bridgeport last year. I know a couple of the prospects that I think I personally have a lot of interest in watching, and it'll be interesting to see how things go in their pro career as they both turn pro this year in North America. But Aatu Räty and William Dufour both could be big pieces of the future if things continue to progress and develop the way they have been. But I've heard comments from Lou Lamoriello after watching rookie camp saying that he didn't think either one was ready for NHL action. Now, of course, they both are very different players, both coming off really, really good seasons last year. In their own right. Dufour, for example, coming off a Quebec League championship, disappointment with the Sea Dogs, but then they came back and won the Memorial Cup. He set records for goals in that team. Got to play in Team Canada when the World Juniors resumed in August. Just a real solid end to his junior career, which was great to see. And Räty had a real solid year as well. Be interesting to see if these guys can play big roles, log big minutes, and big parts of the Bridgeport team. Depending on how injury-riddled the team may or may not become, they could see some action this year, depending on how things go. But I would suspect that Salo being really the only one to really get any kind of regular duty, but Holmstrom probably being the preferred forward to be called up ahead of the other two guys there that I just mentioned. As far as what's their lineup expected to look like this year, well, you're probably still going to have a line of Brock Nelson, Kyle Palmieri, and Anthony Beauvillier. You're likely going to have Anders Lee playing with Matthew Barzal and Josh Bailey. I wouldn't mind seeing Oliver Wahlstrom get more of a role in that top 6. I think he's probably better suited than Josh Bailey at this point. Your third line is going to be Pajot and Parise, possibly Wahlstrom. I mean, I would consider flipping Bailey and Wahlstrom myself. We'll see what they do in camp. And, of course, your fourth line, your identity line is still intact with Casey Cizikas centering, Cal Clutterbuck, and Matt Martin. I know Clutterbuck's coming off a pretty substantial injury in surgery, and he appears to be ready to go. On your blue line, you're going to have likely a top pair of Romanov and Dobson. Of course, you get Pelech and Pulock. And then it's likely Mayfield and Salo. Now, they may choose not to play Romanov and Dobson together. They may flip Pelech and Romanov possibly, depending on the scenario or type of game or, special teams, things like that. But those are definitely going to be your 4 guys, be your top 4, with Mayfield anchoring the third pair with likely Robin Salo. And, of course, Varlamov and Sorokin is your duo between the pipes. I really think Ilya Sorokin could have a breakout season this year as he hopefully gets a bigger chunk of the workload. And I could even see him being in contention for the Vezina Trophy this year and competing with fellow countryman Igor Shesterkin. I know they competed and were very much, two of the top goalies in Russia for quite some time when they were a bit younger before they came to North America. So it'll be interesting to see how much of a step he can take. That could be huge for the Islanders this year. But the big question, like I said, is what kind of impact is this coaching change going to have? Can this team with relatively no change bounce back and be a team that compete for playoffs? My concern with this team is coincide with what I've heard a lot of fans say, just a lack of change and a lack of offense. I mean, unfortunately, as much as the Islanders probably can bounce back and be better without making changes, like I said, I don't want to give them too many excuses and outs of last year's disappointment and the reasons why, but those reasons are real and they are legit. The only problem is that we've seen other teams in their division also make moves to get better. Carolina's still really strong, might even be better than last year. The Rangers are going to be just as good or better than last year as well. Pittsburgh's made a lot of changes, a lot of moves. Washington's still really strong. The Devils have made some moves to get better. Really at the end of the day, can the Islanders bounce back and get in to the top 3 of the division? It's certainly not going to be any easy task. But certainly, we've already seen a coaching change. We've seen very little roster movement. If this team does struggle out of the gate, I would think that, trades would be the next thing that we see. Of course, another big storyline to follow with this team this year as well will be the looming extension for Matthew Barzal. Of course, he said all the right things so far. Sounds very interested in inking a long-term deal. Hopefully they can get something done or retain this player and find a way to unlock that skill even more by pairing him with hopefully the right line mates, because I think he's a player that's really still, to this part in his career, not really fully hit his peak. And I think a lot of that's just because of the style of game they play and the line mates that he's had. I think you get him on a different team, different line mates, he'd really explode offensively. So hopefully Lane Lambert can find a way to unlock that talent and really help him take his game to the next level. Even if he can get back to what he was more so in his rookie season when he was an 80-point player, that would go a long way to really helping this Islanders team bounce back and take a step in the right direction. But I certainly expect the defensive game and the goaltending to be solid as usual. A lot of it's just going to depend on how much can this team score. So let me know your thoughts on the Islanders and their upcoming year down in the comments. Can they bounce back? Will it be in contention for playoffs? Can they be a danger in the playoffs like they were a couple years prior to last year? Let me know your thoughts in the comments and we'll discuss further. Of course, if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.